Welcome in to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, our first edition of team portal reviews. We've done some grades of some of the guys that have transferred up into Power 4, Power 5 conference play, from mid-majors, low majors. Seen a lot of those write-ups, but for these bigger teams, we wanted to hop on, do individual videos for each team, so that you guys can check those out, have a better idea of where the Power 5 teams are at. Also, you'll notice we have another guest here with us in the episode, Nate. He's going to become kind of our in-episode host. At least that's the goal of it. Might not be on here all the time. Might just be Cody and I still sometimes. But the goal would be for Nate to kind of run the show for us so that Cody and I can be a bit more engaged in dialogue of what's going on, and Nate really do a nice job moderating the conversation. So for today we're gonna jump right into that. We're gonna start with 5 teams in the Big 12. So without further ado, I'll throw it over to Nate and we'll jump right in.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I feel like we've been talking hoops for years and years, and talking hoops last year, so I'm excited to get started, but we'll jump right into it. So we're covering the Big 12, as Marcus said today. We're going to start out with Kansas. Kansas got a couple guards added to their roster, and we'll start with Cody, see what he has to say about Kansas's newest acquisitions.
Yeah, I mean, overall, first of all, great to have you on. Definitely excited for the three of us to come on here a couple times a week or 3-4 times a week, talk some hoops, and hopefully provide you guys with some good content. But I mean, as for this roster, I mean, Kansas, Bill Self's trying to build more of a defensive-led roster here at this point. You kind of see what he did throughout the portal, adding guys like Jaden Dawson, Melvin Council, and Trey White on the wing. Trey White coming from Illinois. He's more of a two-way wing, kind of an off-the-ball shooter, but also can provide some on-ball creation for this Kansas team that might kind of need it. I think they were kind of hoping to end up getting Darian Williams, but I think now there's going to be a lot of responsibility on Darren Peterson. But I think Trey White's going to be able to help in that role, provide some versatility. Don't really love him particularly on either side of the ball, but I think he can provide some value on either side. So also, do you have any thoughts on Trey White, Marcus?
Yeah, I mean, just really Kansas as a whole here. My biggest concern is, like, you're going to be asking a lot of a freshman. I'm looking at this roster, and I just feel like there's not a ton of offensive creation. Obviously you lost your 2 guys in Zeke Mayo and Hunter Dickinson. Hunter Dickinson, shout out, he's now on LinkedIn if anyone was wondering. But just in general, like, I'm not really sure how this team is going to be able to put up a ton of points. And to your point, right, Bill Self went a little bit more defensive minded, but I don't know if it's enough to really, really compete. You're going to be, like I said, asking Darren Peterson, I think, to do a lot, which his expectations are very, very high. He's projected to go in a lot of mock drafts actually before AJ Debinsa next year in the NBA draft. So his upside is super high. Now he's got to go out there and show it. Looking at like a kid like Flagg this year at Duke, who had super high expectations, but didn't walk into a situation where, it was an all new roster, or it kind of was, but it was a bunch of guys that, were also very, very skilled, right, with some experience alongside that. You look at this Kansas team, Peterson's going into a situation where, he's got Badunga back, and then, a bunch of guys that are transferring in, right? I mean, is Badunga the only returning player, right? So
some bench pieces, yeah.
Yeah, but of guys that played, it's just really Badunga. So it's an interesting spot that I think Bill Self has rarely been in, if ever been in his time at Kansas. So the offense concerns me. I don't really know if they're going to be able to score enough points to hang with the top teams, at least not right now, based on how it looks.
Yeah, this roster construction, I think, as it stands right now, I think this is a surefire top 10 defense, especially with Badunga returning on the back line. But the three transfers, Dawson, Council, and White, they're all going to start. They're all going to play on the wing. They're all super switchable. They can guard multiple positions. And like you said, yeah, it just comes down to on the offensive side of the ball. There's not like Council is a primary creator. He kind of struggled with efficiency at St. Bonaventure, but he's going to be taking on a lot of that role if Peterson can't really be like a playmaker or like more of a true point guard that this team might kind of need down the road. But overall, I think, yeah, there's versatility across this roster, and definitely more defensive minded.
Yeah. I know like last year, Trey White actually like did shoot the ball better. He actually was up like 5%, I think, from three this year at Illinois from his previous 2 years. I mean, he was actually up almost 7% from his first season at Illinois. So maybe he can provide some shooting spark for them, even though I don't, 32.5% isn't going to do a lot. And then like Melvin Council, not a great shooter. Not a very efficient scorer, really. I mean, below 30% from three. Jaden Dawson can shoot it a little bit. I mean, he's shown pretty high efficiency from behind the arc in his time at Loyola. I think he was over 36% all 3 seasons. So, in one season, actually over 40, if I remember right. So, maybe he can provide that spark for them there. They're going to need it because other than that, hopefully Badunga has worked on his offensive game this offseason. They'll need him to really expand his game, but I just think that offense is gonna struggle.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think Dawson's probably the guy that can fit in right away. He can pretty much fit in on any roster just with his movement, shooting ability, and spot up shooting ability, just ability to space the floor for the creators that it looks like it's going to be Peterson and Council. And like you mentioned, yeah, Council, not the greatest shooter. He's okay off the catch, not great, but maybe playing around better talent will help improve his efficiency overall. This team, I think, with the guys that they brought in, I think they're going to have to run a little bit more than they typically have. They're probably going to have to be a team that's top 50 in the nation in pace, because I think all of these guys can kind of thrive in transition just with their athleticism, their foot speed, getting up and down the floor. I think it's going to be a plus quality for them.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to have to, because that'll be, I think, where they can generate some of their offense. Like you said, they're going to be a good defensive team. Can their defense turn to offense and keep them in games against some of the better teams? Of course, we know at home at Allen Fieldhouse, that's always a possibility with that crowd and their ability to just heat it up there. But when they're on the road, can their defense travel and get them out in transition? Can they muck games up, I guess, really? Like, it's not a very common thing to talk about when you're talking about a Kansas team that's typically very skilled. But this team, not only does it not have a ton of offensive punch, but it also isn't very deep, unless some, obviously there are going to be guys that get better, and there always are, and guys that surprise. But as it stands right now, based on what we know about what these guys did in last season, it's not a deep roster by any stretch.
Yeah,
overall,
I would.
Sorry, Cody. Do you guys think
Go ahead.
this will be an improvement from last year? They were 7 seed in the tournament, but it seems like they're relying a lot on pace and their defense turning into offense, and they don't have a lot of offense on this roster.
I'm going to say they're better. I think the shooting quality is something that maybe we're underestimating a little bit. I think they're a better shooting team than they were last year, at least on paper right now. And their defense is, that's going to give them a super high floor. They're going to be a top 5 Big 12 team again, whether we like them or not. So, and I like, because I love Badunga as a defensive anchor, getting more than 16 minutes per game that he got. And then, like I said, I like the transfers from a floor raising perspective. Like, I don't love White as a defender one on one. Council's one of the best defenders I've scouted so far, and during this transfer portal class, like, he's a menace on the ball. He can absolutely take away the head of the snake of any team's offense. Like, he'll shut down pretty much any point guard. And he averages, his block rate is fairly high, and he gets after you. 2.1 steals per game at Bonaventure last year. So, and then Jaden Dawson's just a solid 3-and-D guy, like we've mentioned. So I do think they're going to be better. I'd say 5-6 seed range is probably where they're going to be at, and I don't see them slipping towards like a last four in kind of thing, just because their floor is going to be so high.
Yeah. I think I see them more about the same. I think as of right now, anyway. Maybe some of these guys surprise me, but like I like Badunga, but I do have my reservations about him, especially like on the offensive end. I think at times he kind of like could get in his own head a little bit on the offensive end. Obviously, he's great defensively, but they don't have KJ Adams or Dickinson to go get him a sub this year to help him, to get him right, or if he's struggling at the foul line, which we saw him do quite often this past season. So I think that the reason maybe that they are about the same is they start a little bit slow. I think, especially with the schedule that they play early in the season, typically, I could see them coming out the gates a little bit slower, just trying to like figure it out, and figure out kind of who's going to be their guys, and Peterson as well. The adjustment from high school, I think that's not nothing. I think that him coming in like you see with most freshmen, especially even the high level guys like him, it takes a little bit of an adjustment period to get them playing at a top level. So when Kansas opens up and plays, some of those big teams early in the first few weeks of the season, I could see them struggling a little bit. That maybe hurts their seeding later in the year.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else you guys want to add, or?
Probably nothing more in particular. I mean, like I said, they're going to have a high floor, and it is a little bit upsetting to see this team the last couple of years kind of slide. I had high expectations, and we both had high expectations for Kansas, especially last year. We had them preseason number 1 last year, and I thought they were going to be really, really good the year before too. And I mean, 4 seed in the tournament isn't really bad 2 years ago, obviously, but it's not typical of this program. So maybe they surprise us. I don't really see the high ceiling. I don't see a championship ceiling, especially with the guys that they brought in. Like I said, they really thought they were going to end up bringing in Darian Williams, which would have changed a lot. It would have changed my opinion quite a bit. Like, he would have probably been more of the offensive hub for this team. He's more of a point forward, but sadly for them, he ended up going to NC State, and they kind of just have to pivot and adjust and deal with the consequences, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Marcus, anything you want to add?
I got nothing. I'll be just interested to see really how. I think the most intriguing thing will be how Peterson really takes on his role early. Does he jump right in and he's dominant from day one, or does it take him a little bit of time? So, Kansas, as always, they'll be in the thick of things, but I don't see like top level ceiling for them this year.
Yeah, not a lot of talent wants to go to Lawrence, unfortunately. All right, well, as always, thank you guys for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast, and we'll have more Big 12 content coming up soon.